I want to thank everyone for joining us this morning, especially this esteemed group of civic and community leaders who've been at the forefront of trying to combat human trafficking. We're here to talk about a bill that Assemblymember Rob Bonta authored and championed to the very end to become law, the Human Trafficking Prevention, Education, and Training Act. And we are thrilled that so many people have gotten behind this effort. Let me introduce to you then the people who are here in front of you and the people who will be speaking. After I make my opening remarks, I will ask the Assembly member, Mr. Bonta, to come forward. Then we will ask the esteemed mayor of the great city of Sacramento, Darrell Steinberg, to come forward. Then the co-founder and president of Three Strands Global, Ashley Bryant, who has been just a stalwart champion on this, to come forward. David Fisher, on the front lines, a teacher, and the president of the Sacramento City Teachers Association will be speaking as well. And Jason Spencer, who is a principal advisor to our state superintendent of public instruction here in California, who is an indispensable partner in this war against human trafficking. Along with those individuals who will speak, we're also pleased to be joined by Peter Cervinka, the Chief Deputy Director of the California Department of Social Services and council member of the City Council of this great city of Sacramento, Alan Warren. I think we should start when we talk about human trafficking. That means sex trafficking, labor trafficking. I think we have to start by first mentioning that this is modern-day slavery, and it's happening in our own backyard. No one should think that this is a problem that emanates from another country or it's happening to someone else's family. It's happening here and to our families. Here at the Department of Justice, we take an approach that we consider the 4 Ps. We talk about prevention, partnership, protection, and prosecution. Today is all about prevention and partnership. It should surprise no one that, once again, California is the first in the nation to enact a law that requires us to try to prevent something as bad as human trafficking by going into our schools and requiring our middle and high schools to provide education and training to students and teachers to make sure that we do everything possible, from having to avoid a prosecution, having to avoid going out in the streets to protect, but more importantly is to start the effort to prevent and to partner. And so we're thrilled that Assemblymember Bonta decided to be the quarterback that took us all the way down to the end zone and let us score this tremendous victory for so many, mostly young people, mostly young girls in our great state of California. I think it's important to mention that all children are our children. And make no mistake, if one child is abused, is commercially trafficked for sex, that's our child. And we should stand up. At the end of the day, California should be able to say that no young person in our state deserves to have his or her childhood ripped away from them. And no parent in California deserves to have his or her child taken away from him or her. And so that's why we're here, so thrilled to be with so many leaders who have led this fight, to say that we are doing what no other state has yet done. Once again, we're at the forefront, and we're going to make it clear that it's not just about prosecuting these bottom feeders that go after our kids. It's not just about trying to work with law enforcement to protect our children in our communities. It's about preventing this and partnering together to make sure we prevent this from happening to any child, because every child is our child. With that, I'd like to ask our quarterback, Assemblymember Bonta, to please take the microphone.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney General Becerra, for your very kind remarks and for framing this critical issue. I just want to thank you up front, first and foremost, for all of your tremendous leadership that you've shown for the state of California, standing up for our values of opportunity and equity and justice and inclusion, and standing up for our environment and our immigrants, our health care, our civil rights, and certainly taking head on this fight against human trafficking, such a devastating and unacceptable epidemic that we're facing here in California, in this nation, and worldwide. I'm Rob Bonta. I serve in the California State Assembly. I'm honored to represent the 18th Assembly District, the great cities of Oakland, Alameda, and San Leandro. I'm the Assistant Majority Leader and the Chair of the Asian Pacific Islander Legislative Caucus. And I'm just so honored to be part of this coalition up here that got this done together. This was, from the very beginning, a team effort. We worked together. We teamed up, and we had one goal in mind: to get this done and get this across the finish line, and take on a different approach that hadn't been taken before in the state legislature. Most of the legislation and the action that you had seen up to now was around increasing punishments with respect to the buyers or the exploiters, also providing services for the survivors and the victims, but not focusing on this very critical early detection and prevention component. And so I want to thank Three Strands Global for their leadership. You know, they modeled a very successful program for us, and we said this is ready for to get scaled up and to get shared with everybody. Those who aren't benefiting from it need to benefit from it. So very excited to work with them on this and with our great team. You know, human trafficking is a $150 billion global industry, the fastest growing criminal enterprise in the world. Just staggering, devastating, unacceptable numbers. According to the National Human Trafficking Hotline, California has the highest number of incidents of human trafficking reported in the nation. And, you know, to protect our youth and stop this crime, we decided to move forward with AB 1227. And you know, we had legislators along the way that saw the wisdom and prudence of this approach, that voted for it along the way. And I also want to just take an opportunity to thank our governor, Mr. Jerry Brown, who doesn't sign all the bills that I put on his desk, but decided to sign this one, which is something I very much appreciate. We think this is important in its unique approach because prevention education combats human trafficking at its root. So the goal is not just to identify children who are actively being trafficked, but also to reduce those number of those who could become victims, buyers, or traffickers in the first place. And you know, I'm very deeply honored and proud to have been the representative and continue to be the representative of the city of Oakland. Sadly, my own district of Oakland is a front line for this fight. It's a hub for human trafficking of children, for labor and for sex. And so this is very personally important to me. And I just want to end by saying, you know, there's big issues that we take on as a state. I think you'll find anyone in any conversation say that human trafficking is a scourge that needs to be addressed and something we need to take on, and we need to do it head on. But not always can you work together with a coalition and a team like this that puts ego aside and puts our survivors and our victims first and foremost as the center of attention, and helps get something done together. So I'm proud of this new, unique approach, which will literally save lives and save, as Attorney General Becerra said, our children across the state of California. So honored to be here, proud to be working with this coalition, and very excited to introduce my friend, a tremendous leader right here in Sacramento, and someone who I was very honored to serve with when he was the pro tem of the Senate. And so got to learn from his tremendous leadership, and very honored to work with him on addressing human trafficking, Mayor Darrell Steinberg.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Assemblymember Bonta. I'm Darrell Steinberg, and as I like to say, I used to have a job over at the Capitol. I was privileged to serve 14 years and 6 as Senate leader. And I came today for a couple reasons. One, to thank the Attorney General for using his office to aggressively prosecute some of those sometimes sleazy internet operators who allow these kinds of practices to continue, because as he's pointed out to me, it's no longer just about street corners. It all happens underground and more easily because of the predominance of the internet. And there needs to just be much more, if not self-regulation, real regulation. He's leading the way here, and I'm deeply appreciative. And I came to congratulate Member Bonta for taking the mantle and thinking and acting in such an innovative way to try to combat this problem. And I say that just upon some reflection, because when I was pro tem, I was privileged to author a couple of important bills, but I'm not sure they necessarily get to the core in the way that Assemblymember Bonta's legislation does. I authored the Transparency in Supply Chain Act, which forces corporations, large corporations, to report their supply chain, or to say on the internet that they refuse to do so. And that's a way of getting companies to look internally at their supply chains and where they are producing their goods. Now, that's not about sex trafficking so much, but it's about trying to get them to look at where they are procuring their goods and the labor conditions they're in. The second bill was more about sex trafficking. It was the bill that requires the 1-800 number to be posted at bars and gas stations and truck stops and similar places, so that a victim could call and get some anonymous help on the spot, the national sort of a clearinghouse. And that's all good and fine, and I'm proud of the work. But really, what the Assembly member has done here and what the legislature has done is more important, because we need to identify victims early. Who would think that you'd have to think about middle school as a place where young victims might be going to school? But the signs are often there. And to educate the teachers and the principals and the school personnel and parents about who might be a victim among them, this is going to save many, many lives. There's nothing more important than this sorts of public education. And I think we just need to call it for what it is. This problem is despicable and it's disgusting. And it deserves every weight of law enforcement, but our entire community, especially our education community, to work to stamp this out in California. There's no place here. It's my pleasure to introduce Ashley Bryant from Three Strands Global, who, again, modeled this very program. And now, some of the best ideas become statewide laws. And here is evidence. Welcome to you.
Thank you. It is a great honor, as Assemblyman Bonta and the mayor has said, to be here today with this coalition. It was an amazing year last year, and we are incredibly grateful that the governor signed AB 1227. Frederick Douglass once said, "It's easier to build strong children than repair broken men." And I really believe that that's what prevention is about. It's about getting to the root and making sure that our teachers can identify those who are being victimized in the classroom, and that then the children, being empowered and understanding what exploitation looks like, can actually maybe self-disclose with that courage that they muster up so that they can get the resources that they need. But another component of that is to make sure that we're empowering our youth. Three Strands Global has been doing prevention education all across California since 2011. And in 2016 came together with the AG's office and the Department of Education, the Institute for Social Research, to create a program called Protect. And it's prevention organized to educate children on trafficking. This program really begins with setting protocols, making sure that teachers and principals know what to do if there's an identification, and that could be identification of a victim or identification of a perpetrator. It also makes sure that there's training of those teachers and then education of students. We want to make sure there's a net underneath our youth so that no one, not one child, is falling through the cracks. That's an important and vital piece. As Assemblyman Bonta shared, California has the highest incidence of human trafficking in the nation. And yet we have taken this leadership role because we know that prevention is going upstream. It's stopping the crime before it starts. One of the things that we talk about often as we are in the counties and rolling this out is the importance of starting early, right? Because prevention is about that. So elementary school, middle school, high school. And this bill, AB 1227, actually focuses within the Healthy Youth Act in just those places, which gives the power to the teachers and the districts and the counties to implement this education so that we can prevent our youth from being victimized or exploited. The mission of Protect has always been to reduce the vulnerability of our youth and to increase their protective factors. That's something that research shows. Increasing protective factors of our youth is actually how we prevent things from happening. So that's one of the most important components of this Protect program as we roll it out in California. Right now, Protect is being rolled out in 17 of our counties, and we are eager for it to be in all 58 counties. That's part of our vision. I want to share with you one of the stories just recently that we heard from a teacher. And you, Mayor, talked about the saving lives, and it's exactly that. A 14-year-old Jack, who's a freshman, who realized he was being exploited online and had the courage to share with his PE teacher that he was being exploited by a 35-year-old man. And they were able to get him resources. He needed help. That's how we save lives in this state, right? We are looking ahead to make sure that we prevent further exploitation or victimization. The other component that's really important and a part of what we're rolling in California as a form of prevention is data. By working with researchers like the Institute for Social Research, we really have put a stake in the ground to say that we're going to make sure that we are actually delivering on this prevention education and that teachers really understand and they are learning and students are learning so that we can disrupt this economy that we call trafficking in the state, because that's what we really need to do. So again, I am so privileged to stand with this group and feel it just an honor to be a part of leading the way in the U.S., as California always does. Thank you so much. Oh, yes. Sorry about that. Make sure to. The next person who will be up at the podium is David Fisher, teacher president of Sacramento City Teachers Association. Thank you.
Thank you. So before I get to my prepared remarks, I just got to say that as a teacher and educator for 20 years or more and having a 13-year-old daughter, this is tough to talk about. As teachers, it can be overwhelming just in general. If any of you have been in that situation where that door closes and you are with those kids and our hearts break if anything happens to those children. And to think about this and to have a tool to help us identify is just unbelievably helpful. I talked about being overwhelming. Well, now we have and will have some help. We'll have some training. We'll have some, we can get together and talk about what are some of the signs, and I just think that it's a really hopeful thing. Now to some prepared remarks. Obviously, protecting California students from human trafficking, criminals, and networks is clearly a vital matter for all educators. That's why educators and the California Teachers Association were strong supporters of the Human Trafficking Prevention, Education, and Training Act, Assembly Bill 1227. Speaking on behalf of the 325,000 members of California Teachers Association as president of the Sacramento Teachers Association, I commend Assemblymember Rob Bonta for sponsoring this law and for the governor for signing it. California is now the first state to adopt human trafficking training for teachers and students. This law provides vital information to arm students and instructors with the tools to combat human trafficking. Educators, as I said, are on the front lines in dealing locally with this global issue. Our state has the highest number of human trafficking cases reported to the National Human Trafficking Hotline. For the safety of our students and communities, it's good to see that this new law requires school districts to provide human trafficking prevention education and training to staff relating to human trafficking prevention. In 2014, 75% of California's human trafficking cases were related to sex trafficking. CTA believes that all commercially and sexually exploited minors are victims and should be treated as such. So here we are, teachable moment. Educators are proud to be a part of this groundbreaking commitment. Together we can keep our schools safe, protect our students and communities from the trauma and tragedies of human trafficking. And on behalf of all the educators who, like I said, can feel very overwhelmed about this issue, we really appreciate this effort. Now I'd like to introduce Jason Spencer, Principal Advisor to State Superintendent of Public Instruction, California Department of Education.
Just want to start by saying good morning, and on behalf of State Superintendent Torlakson, just want to thank Assemblymember Bonta for his leadership, of course the Governor for signing the legislation, and the Attorney General for his work, as well as Three Strands Global for the leadership on this. Ensuring that schools are safe places for all of our students is a top priority, of course, for the superintendent and really for all of us in the room. If students are going to achieve their goals of being prepared for 21st century careers and for life, they have to feel safe in those learning environments. That's a key core piece for us to focus on as educators. And this bill authorizes the California Department of Education to make available on our website and through other resources education about human trafficking prevention and provide those materials to schools for both students and for educators. As we've heard already, I mean, human trafficking is the fastest growing global enterprise, and California is on the front lines of that. 2 million children globally and at least 100,000 here in the United States are commercially sexually exploited every year. In some cases, these victims are as young as 8 years old. So these are students that are in our schools at really every level of the education system. And although human trafficking is certainly found across all types of communities, we want to focus, and we know that it disproportionately affects communities of color. Training teachers and administrators about the signs of human trafficking and their county's response protocol will help provide the tools necessary, not just to identify when a child is at risk, but again, connect them with the services and the support they need to find the help that they need. Prevention education in schools serves three main goals. First, it helps provides a baseline for students to understand that this is, as the Attorney General said, modern-day slavery. And second, it helps students recognize human trafficking when they see it. This is a crime that often hides in plain sight, where trafficking victims obviously go about a day and have a regular routine in front of teachers, in front of friends, in front of family. And then finally, prevention education helps students directly avoid becoming victims of trafficking themselves. It helps them understand how to protect themselves. The techniques that traffickers use are often subtle, they're clever. But however, once they're known, they really become obvious, which really allows for the prevention and intervention that we're talking about today. Prevention education also helps avoid the downstream mental health impacts, chronic absenteeism, and other challenges that students face as a result of becoming a victim of this type of modern-day slavery. Supporting safe school environments for students, for teachers, for staff, for administrators, and anyone that steps on a school campus is our number one priority at the Department of Education. So on behalf of the superintendent and our CDE team, just want to express ongoing gratitude to all of you for the work that got us here and the work that we're going to do together as partners in these prevention efforts. So thank you all very much for the work.
Councilmember Warren.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I, too, am here to support Assemblyman Bonta's bill and to really express my gratitude to the leadership here, our mayor, attorney general, and the other advocates and supporters. I represent the northeastern part of the city of Sacramento, which is a very diverse community. And, this bill is going to really have tremendous positive impacts for all young people and people that have been trafficked or have the potential to be trafficked, but particularly poor people in poor communities and people of color who are particularly vulnerable to this type of issue. And so it is with a deep sense of gratitude, and I was very happy to be invited to come here and to be an advocate and to say thank you to the leadership here for doing such a wonderful thing. Thank you.
Any questions? Take a breath. Algo en español. Daryl, I think they want you to say something in Spanish. Un poquito. Be ready next time. Yeah. En español. I'll let the teacher. Okay, yo primero. Okay. Listen closely. Estamos aquí hoy porque estamos hablando de la cosa más importante para cualquier familia, nuestros hijos, y cómo podemos protegerlos de la violencia, de ese caso cuando uno de nuestros hijos, y más bien nuestras hijas, se encuentra capturada en las manos de gente que la quieren vender y abusar. Y esa niña, y yo tengo 3 hijas, esa niña, esperando la ayuda, no lo encuentra. Y es cuando se pierde. Así que cuando eso sucede con cualquier niña, niño, muchacho, muchacha, tenemos que estar preparados. Y hoy estamos hablando de una nueva ley patrocinada por el asambleísta Rob Bonta, y le damos muchas gracias al señor Bonta por lo que hizo en impulsar una nueva ley que dice que en las escuelas vamos a dar la enseñanza que necesitan nuestros hijos y los maestros para poder evitar que en un futuro una niña, un niño, sea capturado en las manos de gente que lo quieren vender. Y no puede haber algo más importante que hacer eso. Y creer que hay gente que quiere vender a nuestros hijos es a veces increíble, pero así es. Y si nosotros no estamos preparados, qué desgracia. Así que este liderazgo que está aquí hizo posible una nueva ley, la única ley en todo el país. Otra vez aquí en California empezamos primeros para indicar que vamos a hacer todo lo posible para proteger a nuestros hijos. Top that.
Ok. Como dije el señor. No, bueno, como maestros siempre estamos preocupados por nuestros estudiantes, y yo también como padre de una niña de 13 años, y todos estamos preocupados por lo que puede pasar en la calle. Y los maestros a veces vemos cosas o señales, pero no sabemos exactamente qué hacer. Y esa ley va a darnos unos señales, unas lecciones y un entrenamiento para que podamos identificar cuando hay posibilidades de ese tráfico humano, que hay gente en el mundo que quiere vender nuestros hijos, y ahora en lugar de solamente sentir triste y no saber qué hacer, ahora vamos a tener una manera para identificar y ojalá también para parar y prevenir esta muy feo cosa. Gracias.
Oh, okay. Other questions? Any questions?
Looks like you're going to set up a strict grade-by-grade approach.
Who wants to take that question? Who wants to take that?
Yeah.
Ash, please.
Sure.
Take mine.
Absolutely. So within the Healthy Youth Act, which is AB 1227, that's where we actually we fall. There is once in middle school and once in high school where students should be educated and then teachers should be trained. So the great news is about our state is that we have a health framework, and really it's anywhere from 5th grade to 12th grade. And so teachers can use this training or the curriculum particularly for breadth and depth into what they're already teaching and what they're already using. So 5th, 7th, 9th, and 11th are the 4 grades where this was designed, and so that's where we're actually rolling out in counties. We actually have a county superintendent here too today from Sutter. So we actually are rolling this out, and as we do that, we make sure that the teachers have in their hands that curriculum in those 4 grades. But the Healthy Youth Act specifically was in middle school and high school. So. Yes, exactly. So it'll be part of the family life, what we know as family life or health education. Part of what's important, and I talked about earlier, was increasing protective factors within our youth and reducing vulnerability. How do we do that at the age of 10, right? How do we make sure that our kids are really understanding that we're empowering them to say no? And one of the visuals, which we love, that we actually put together when we were putting together Protect was a hula hoop. And if you think about it visually, we are empowering students to say, hey, this is your hula hoop, your safe space. And you let people into that safe space, or you choose not to let people into that safe space. And that's your choice. That's online as well as in person. And we know that traffickers often will approach, right, our youth, and whether that's coercion or it's manipulation or it's force or fraud, because it's human trafficking, we want our youth to be able to say, hey, this is my space. And that alone actually increases their protective factors and reduces their vulnerability as a trafficker would try to do something like that. So anyway.
Just wanted to point out this map. You can see some of the hot spots for human trafficking, sex trafficking, labor trafficking. But I want to point out something very important. Some people think that the problem resides in urban communities, densely populated areas where you've got lots of victims to sort of go after, and a lot of clients who want to purchase sex, especially from minors. We just busted last year a sex trafficking ring based out of Tulare County, where these guys would take mostly girls, many of them under the age of 16, under the age of 18, many of them substantially younger than the age of 18, and they would transport them to the major centers, LA, San Diego, San Francisco, Sacramento, and then commercially sell them. This is not a problem in someone else, as I said before, in someone else's backyard. This is occurring here, wherever here may be, whether Sacramento or in one of the smallest towns you might find in the state of California. Please don't think that because you're a small community that it can't happen here. Please be vigilant for your kids, and I don't mean just those in your home, your kids in your community. We were able to get a 28-year sentence on the ringleader of this sex trafficking ring. But they pop up as quickly as we can find them. And so help us. Any other thoughts? Yes.
Speaking of the map, can you give us numbers of people who you think are being trafficked, and how many of those are kids? Are they missing kids, or are these kids who go to school, then they're abused, and then they come back and their parents don't even know what's going on? Can you kind of explain all that?
Ashley can probably give you some real examples, and I know there some of the folks, and Assemblymember Bonta probably has some of these seared in his mind about some of these numbers. So let them both comment, and anyone else.
Sure. I think I'll start with a statistic that's really important for us all to understand, and that's out of the University of San Diego and Point Loma Nazarene, a study from 2016, and that is that 78% of human trafficking victims don't even know they're victims of human trafficking. It's a really important statistic for us as we look at this map in particular, because what that means is that if they don't know they're victims of human trafficking, it falls on us, the community, to be able to recognize and identify them. So your question is a great one. You know, we look at this map and we think, gosh, it's probably even more red than what we see as the human trafficking hotline has captured. But we need to understand and know what we're looking for in our classrooms as well as in our communities, so that we can say, hey, I want to make sure you get the resources that you need. These kids are in our schools, and if they don't know they're victims of human trafficking, then we need to be able to recognize them. I will tell you that oftentimes it's because human trafficking, the definition of human trafficking, that they don't even know what that is, right? They don't even know that they're being exploited. Oftentimes we have youth that will say, I just thought I was being abused, right? I just thought that this was my boyfriend. I was in a relationship, and this was just part of what I knew and I understood, and I have since for a very long time. So actually giving it context of what is human trafficking. Is there force? Is there fraud? Is there coercion? And helping them understand it at the foundational level helps us to not only recognize them, but for them to recognize if they're being exploited too themselves.
And since you asked about some numbers, I'll just give you a couple to get a better sense of the scale and the scope. There's 100,000 victims in the United States and 40 million victims globally of human trafficking, and sort of going from larger to smaller, sort of focusing on my district in particular. And in the Bay Area, statistics show there are nearly 5,000 youth victims of human trafficking every year in the Bay Area. And again, this is urban and rural, it's inland and coastal, it's north and south and Central Valley as well. So it's everywhere. But those numbers are just way too big. They need to be zero everywhere, and so we have a huge challenge on our hands, and this is going to make a big dent in it.
Do you know what those numbers are in California?
I don't have the California number, but I can get it for you.